Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Shri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Shri and Peter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm one of the aforementioned CPG guys. I'm PVSB, the Loyalty, CRM, and Insights guy, aka Scary Spice. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host. He's the Media, Direct-to-Consumer, and Supply Chain guy, aka Posh Spice. How about that cultural reference? He is the Hershiser to my Sosha, the Messier to my Gretzky, and the Sims to my McConkey. Please join me in welcoming Shri. Shri, how you doing, old buddy?
I was hoping you'd call me David Beckham and
not the left foot, right foot, I don't know.
I'll take it. But Peter, pleasure doing this with you week over week. You can tell if you listen to this podcast, we love what we do, is sharing knowledge.
Yeah, you know, Shri, I'll bring a little bit of current affairs into what's going on right now as we record this. As a Dodger fan, I've been hit by two big losses this week. First, Tommy Lasorda, and then Don Sutton. So there's a lot of blue in Dodger Town.
The Yankees added somebody.
Oh, I don't want to hear about that. Yankees.
We may start with Cody.
Yeah,
we'll leave it at that.
Okay. In any event, let's get past the baseball element. Let me remind our audience that all of our content, we're on 20 platforms. We're on both of the major voice OSs. Our videos on YouTube. We've got a lot of document content. You can find all of that at cpgguys.com. And we really appreciate feedback from you. And our podcast can be advanced by you giving us ratings and reviews. You know, I'm a rating and review guy. So could you please take the time to go to the Apple Podcast platform and give us a rating and review? You can get there easily. Just go to ratemypodcast.com/CPG Guys. That's ratemypodcast.com/CPG Guys. Both Shri and I greatly appreciate the feedback. We use it to guide the direction of the content that we share on this podcast, which is actually part of why we are talking to our guest today. So let me get right to that. We're very happy to welcome our guest for this episode. He's the founder and CEO of Shiphero, which is a SaaS solution to help e-commerce direct-to-consumer sellers with fulfillment and shipping. Aaron Rubin. Aaron, how are you today?
Hey, Peter, and also hi, Shri. I'm a fan of the show. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That's great to know.
I'm going to leave a comment on the review saying, talk more about logistics. So just FYI, if you hear someone on there, that's me.
We like it. This is good. Thank you for that. Hey, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Shiphero before we get into the questions today?
Sure. Yeah. So I started Shiphero with a co-founder about 8 years ago. His name's Nicholas Daniel Richards. Before that, I had an e-commerce company that I started way back in 1999 when I was in college. We sold apparel for a martial art called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So Shiphero has two business units. One is a SaaS business unit where we provide warehouse management software to direct-to-consumer brands, as well as CPG brands that are getting into direct-to-consumer. We ship about 5 million packages a month through that software. And then we also have our own warehouses. So we've got 7 of our own warehouses that some brands outsource to. And that's the business.
That's terrific, Aaron. Thank you so much for that deep background. Before we get into the questions, there is one other question I have for you, or it's more of a request, because a lot of our audience likes to multitask as they're listening to this. Can you tell people where they can go to find out more about Shiphero?
Yeah, so just shiphero.com, really simple. And then if you, for some reason, don't know why, want to hear more of me, I'm on Twitter at Aaron, AARON, and ANDML. That's my handle on Twitter. I'm pretty active on there.
Excellent. And for our audience, we'll put both of those in the liner notes with hyperlinks to this podcast, so you can find that easily. I've actually been scouring through your Twitter feed recently, Aaron, and
You're the one.
I love the content you're producing, and you're a very honest person. And I appreciate that. You're not trying to hype stuff. You're really trying to inform and educate, and that's what we like. So thank you for that. All right, so let me get into this. Just prior to recording, you and I were talking a little bit about your prior business, or the first business you founded, rather, Xango, which is the Brazilian jiu-jitsu apparel business. And your biggest problem back in the late 90s was just trying to get a credit card processor to take you seriously enough to let you do transactions. So you're doing that. And then about 8 years ago, you decide to found Shiphero. Can you walk us through how that kind of came about, and what led you to move in that direction away from the business that you'd originally founded?
And Aaron, truth be told, if we were in non-virus times, we'd be doing this in person, and I would have asked you to show us a Cobra Kai move. Peter's a big fan, by the way.
Oh God, I'm obsessed with Cobra Kai.
I'd have to put both of you to sleep first, and then we could do the podcast. Yeah, so kids these days don't know how easy they have it with Shopify and Stripe. We had to do it the hard way back in the late 90s. Yeah. So my motivation to start it really was our warehouse was in New York for Xango, and New York was our biggest market, but California was our second biggest, and we had to compete with Prime. So we had to second day air lots of uniforms and rash guards and T-shirts to California, and I was giving UPS more money every year than I was taking home for myself, and I found that infuriating. So I was like, I'm going to fix this. And 8 years later, I'm still working on fixing it, but that's where it all started.
It sounds like, what can you do for Brown? That doesn't seem to be the right way. It should be, what are they doing for you?
Yeah, there's the FedEx UPS duopoly that works really well if you're one of those two in the duopoly, but a little tougher if you're a small player.
Sure.
Now, when you started Xango back in the days, what was the mission and purpose for Xango? And were you really focused only on the uniform and the clothing and apparel piece, or did you actually get into the actual physical business of training martial arts?
No, so we just sold equipment. It was purely online e-commerce retailer. We started with karate and taekwondo, and eventually ended up doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu exclusively. There was no strategy. I'd been making my money. Sort of my last real job was as a lifeguard at 16, and then I just been doing various things online, doing some like advertising, creating some content, making money on ads. And family friend reached out, wanted to do this business. I thought, hey, it's another little side business. I'll do a couple hours a week and make some extra money, because that's how I was living in college. And it took off, and I actually dropped out of college after 3 years because I was making a lot more money than I was going to make when I graduated and got a real job. So I dropped out after 3 years, and then lots of ups and downs, but it was totally unintentional.
What I hear you say, Aaron, as I'll move to the next question here, is it's the true story of America. A lot of hard work, a lot of hustle. You start from, grassroots, and then you build it up, and the hustle continues. But it's inspirational for people in general, people in our industry. We are in the middle of what I would call highly transformational times in CPG brands and retailers in the business of fulfillment, and you're right in the middle of it. And if you hadn't got into it 10 years ago or 20 years ago, in this case, you would have missed the transformation, and the value you add to the industry would have also been missed. And that's where this next question goes, Aaron. Obviously, in the last year, with unfortunately due to COVID and the virus issue, digital sales due to hygienity and fulfillment have broken the roof. And I believe it's broken a glass ceiling in terms of the should it be done or should it not be done, or procrastination. Now, you are running a logistics optimization WMS, from what I learned on your website. Is that 100% true? And then if so, what specifically in the industry was missing that you've jumped on, other than the pricing aspect that you just mentioned about couriers? And then who are your typical clients across the board?
Yeah, so on COVID, one interesting story on CPG was Mars, the chocolate company, wanted to do. It was like you buy Snickers for nurses and frontline workers, right? And they signed up. It was Shopify and with us, and a couple of weeks into lockdowns, we were live, probably around 15 days to get that live, which is
Wow.
insane. And only way that was going to happen is the urgency of COVID. Like typical procurement process with CPG brands, like 6 months to a year. Like that's typically how long that process takes, and that one took 15 days. So so it definitely catalyzed a lot of stuff.
But Aaron, just you mentioned typical 6 months. Like even before we answer the question I asked you, how in the world did that get fast tracked from 6 months to 2 weeks? I mean, that's a record of sorts.
Yeah, so I mean, we do that. Like for us on the software side, uh, we typically say 3 weeks to get live, so it's not that big a deal. Usually, the 6 months to a year is getting through the procurement process is like 90% of that, right? And then like we go on site, we do training that typically adds a week or so, which we didn't do here because of COVID. Obviously, no one was able to go and travel. But it was really just, the will. A bunch of people got together, wanted to do it, and we're able to, like, we have a really inexpensive product. It starts at like less than $2,000 a month. So someone was just swipe their card and just did it rather than go through procurement.
You hear that to our audience and our brand audience in particular? Sounds like someone asked for forgiveness rather than wait the 6 months to ask for permission and seize the opportunity. So I'm glad to hear that you were partnered up with someone who understood the importance of getting that done and allowed you to shine in terms of your deployment capabilities.
Yeah, I actually have another one like that if you want to hear, which was, yes. So Canadian Tire, right? Huge.
For the audience purposes, full disclosure, my brother works at Canadian Tire at corporate.
Okay.
Sorry, got to throw that out there.
Yeah. Okay. But they're like I don't know, $10 billion.
Yes, they're a big company.
They're a big company, right? So an AVP there, just his name is Carmine Bosco, who's a huge supporter of ours, right? Several years ago, he did the same thing, right? He just couldn't get stuff done that he wanted fast enough. And like, he just took his credit card, swiped his credit card. And then, a year later we were up, or a couple of years later, we were up in their corporate headquarters and, formalizing some more stuff. But till then, it just did it, just got it done. And then we together, proved the value, showed success, showed incredible growth in that division versus the other divisions. And then, he took the risk and became a hero for it. But it's, it's definitely a bold move to just go ahead and do it.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I know I took you off on a complete tangent from the original question.
Sri never does that. No.
I want to get back to it.
No rabbit holes in Shri's world.
Which was, are you guys just a WMS software? And then what makes you unique in the industry that brands gravitate to you? And then what are like a sampling of your clients or like categories you're working in?
Yeah, so we're a networked WMS and we're SaaS. So the SaaS part just means we're fast and cheap, right? Like fast to implement and cheap to implement, no contracts. I mean, we sign contracts with people that want contracts, but we never ask for contracts, right? Super easy to get started, not a lot of money, no commitment at all. Networked means anyone can work with any of the warehouses, basically. So you ask for a customer, so I'll give you both a customer and an example together. Actually, maybe I shouldn't say the customer, but really large entity, public company. They're doing $500 million with us, who they started with 2 facilities on their own using our software. And then they worked with, at this point, maybe 3 or 4 outside fulfillment centers, 3PLs, third-party logistics companies, both in the US and outside the US. So they grew massively. And instead of opening new warehouses, they just asked us like, hey, are there good warehouses we can work with? We introed a few. They made deals with outsource deals with them. But as far as they're concerned, from the management perspective, it's the exact same, whether it's an owned warehouse or a third party warehouse. So that delivers that capability. But then for another company, so I don't know, are you guys familiar with the walking company? Yeah. So the walking company, what they were able to do, and in COVID, this was a huge help, is deploy our software to all their stores for ship from store and buy online, pick up in store. And like we charge $150 for a user. So in each facility, it cost them $150 a month. They had to buy a printer for the labels if they were shipping, and a barcode scanner from Amazon for $25. And they were up and live, right? So like not calling one of your Manhattan's, Red Prairies, whatever, Blue Yonder, and having a whole large installation. Just someone goes, sets it up, they spend $150 a month, and they're live. So that networked aspect allows for some, it's always valuable, mostly for people who had like a bunch of warehouses. But now buy online, pick up in store, ship from store is so huge, and it just plugs right in. No additional fees, just do it.
Can you walk us through how the shipping component works, given that it's focused on cost reduction for shipping? I mean, do you have a network of suppliers you work with, and how do you optimize that?
Yeah, so
go ahead.
I was to say the brands bring their own carrier accounts, right? So they generally have their own UPS, FedEx, et cetera. We're not forcing them to use anything they don't want to use. We support all the majors and a bunch of second tier or smaller players. We focus on a couple of things. First is just get the product closer to the end customer. At the end of the day, that's the best way. It's cheaper, it's faster, and it's more environmentally friendly if you're shipping a shorter distance. So that's step one, right? Don't ship from one warehouse in New York like I used to, all the way to California, second day air, right? Ship out of Nevada and ship it ground. It'll get there faster and cheaper. So that's step one on cost reduction. And then the other stuff is there's algorithms and rules you could set up, and we do live quoting. So basically, the person shipping the order just presses the print label button, and it, based on your rules and which carriers you want to use, it just automatically spits out the cheapest label.
Follow-up question on that. In terms of where you're focusing growth in your business, which side of the two components that you're offering consumers are you really trying to grow right now?
Yeah, so I mean, both the warehouse side, the warehousing side is growing faster just because it's smaller, so percentage-wise it's growing faster. But we're doing like 5 million orders a month, shipping 5 orders a month on the SaaS side, which is more than double what we were same time last year. So they're both growing really quickly.
So Aaron, just listening to you speak, I had a quick question on how you balance the WMS side of the fence with your actual, if I learned correctly, you have 7 warehouses and you're going to grow over time, but how do you balance both? Do you have some sort of formula you're using, or you're just letting it play out?
Yeah, so I mean, the warehouses are customers of our own software. So it's actually been really great having our own, because sort of getting feedback on a software product from customers is something that's really hard to tell of, like, how big a problem is this really, or is it just like customer doesn't like the way you do a certain thing, versus like when it's your own, you get in, like I go to one of the warehouses generally once a week or once every other week, and I'll spend a day there and ship orders and receive stock and just see how the operation's going, right? And then like when you see something, you're like, wow, this really sucks. We really need to fix this, right? You feel the pain when you're, it's your own employees and yourself doing it. And then what happens is we go back, work with the team, deliver what we think is the solution, and then I'm back at that warehouse and trying it and seeing how it works. And I'm like, sometimes like, man, we made this worse, right? We went the wrong way. So that feedback's been super helpful. So having both it's been a godsend.
Yeah, there's no debate. If you've got an optimization-based WMS that's actually helping a brand optimize its shipping costs, and this later on we're going to ask you about fulfillment, but I'll wait for that one. But there's no debate that if you can back that up with carrier-based fulfillment, you're in a serious competitive space. Which actually the next question is all about your competitive landscape. I'm going to break it up one piece at a time. So again, I don't send you off on a tangent. The first one is the WMS piece. who is your competition, and based on your competition, what makes you extra special?
Yeah, so we mentioned Blue Yonder in Manhattan. So we go up against those guys. Who else do we go? Oh, there's a company called DePasco. I think UPS invested in them. We go up against them a bit. And then there's we're often switching people out of let's say 3PL Central, or they're in ShipStation, and that's sort of where they started, and they're looking to go a little bigger.
And then what makes you why would someone switch over to you?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're comparing us with like a Manhattan, there's a huge cost difference, right? You're talking about million plus installs versus like a few $1,000s a month starting with us, and also just much faster, right? But the general difference is those are more professional service oriented companies and sort of custom companies versus we're a SaaS product, right? So we deliver our product. That's how you get live in a few weeks, right? We're not asking you a million questions of how you want your software configured. We deliver the software. There's a bunch of different ways you could use the software, but they're predefined, right? You can pick in a bunch of different ways. And that also lets us provide a lot of content, right? So we've got, if you go on our YouTube channel, we've got videos showing exactly how we do things, not just what the software can do, but how we use it in our fulfillment warehouses. So you can see the whole process, right? So we deliver a sort of, here's how you, even if you don't know how to run a warehouse, or maybe you've done it with a paper-based solution and you just don't know how to sort of get in the modern era, because we're no paper, so we're all using iPads and barcode scanners. So sort of delivering that as a solution. And then the next thing is just around the usability, which again, it's just iPads. Your training time for a new employee is 1 to 3 hours typically, because everyone knows how to use an iPad, right? It'll speak to you if you like voice, tells you where to go. It's like there's not a lot and everything's scan based, so hard to mess it up when you scan an item. It'll either say it's correct or it's not, right? So that's sort of just simplicity. There's people who want like more complex. They want exactly like, they come in with I want it to do X in this way, and we'll try to tell them, well, here's maybe a different approach. Here's a way that you'll solve that. That's a little easier. But there's people who want it their way, and those people will end up with like a Manhattan because they'll deliver exactly what the customer wants.
Got it. So the way I interpret that, like you do even compete with like an SAP WMS. The difference is mega customizable, probably takes forever to implement. In your case, you got it out of the box. You've got the features kind of clearly outlined. You implement it, you to go in 3 weeks, and life moves on. I think that is the single biggest difference I take away. Is that fair? Is that fair? Yep. And so what about companies, especially the larger brands, are going to have enterprise management softwares that it's come through their IT architecture that's not going to change. So can you bolt onto those?
Yeah, so we integrate with the ERPs. Usually there's a consultant that'll do that work. So yeah, there's a bunch of tons of ERPs. There's SAP integrations that have been done, SAP or NetSuite. There's a range of them that we do. And we also work sort of in the CPG space. We work with a company called Nulogy, which software and a bunch of co-packers. So with Nulogy, we did is we work directly with their team, and there's like a two-way integration. So there's functionality in Nulogy to work with Shiphero. There's functionality in Shiphero to work with Nulogy, and that works really well. So we're in some co-packers. We've done some stuff for co-packers that have worked with Frito-Lay and some other large brands to support that, because you're right. There's data requirements that must go beyond our software. And so we do that via those integrations. And the other thing is our API is totally open. You could just like see everything. It's totally visible. And really modern. So Shopify builds on top of it. They use our software for warehouses that they outsource to, and a bunch of other big brands. So we're really proud of that API, and that sort of gives the people functionality to connect it to their proprietary data sources, which every large brand has.
So the biggest takeaway that I had as a net of those answers was you're just faster and easier to work with, and you're more cost effective. So would it be fair for me to ask you to share your pricing model with our audience? I know it's very transparent on the website and they can find it there. I looked at it last night, but for the benefit of our audience, could you state how you develop the financial aspect of this relationship?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, everything's on the website. You don't have to talk to a salesperson to get the pricing. It's all right there. So,
Refreshing, Peter.
I know.
yeah. So something that I hate when I hate having to jump on a call to find the price, like just give me a range so I know if I'm talking to the right person or not. Right. So, so our product starts at $1,850 a month. And then that includes, I think, 5 users. I'm not 100% sure. And then it's $150 a month for each additional user. We don't charge based on volume. We don't charge based on warehouses. We do charge based on store connections. If you're connecting to more than 10 sales channels, which the majority of brands do not. But in case you do, we do charge for that, which is, I think, $29 a month per store connection above 10.
And
that's it.
Aaron, just to wrap that one up, when you say 10 channels or more, could you just describe the popular channels you guys enable? Like, is it Amazon, 3PL, is it eBay?
Yeah. So Shopify, Amazon, Channel Advisor, eBay. We even do Etsy, BigCommerce, WooCommerce. Not my favorite, but Magento.
Ooh, there's a story there, I imagine.
Oh, you got everything in anything in D2C enabled, and most of the big 3PLs.
Yeah, we got most of the big ones. Yeah, Magento is just they went from 1 to 2, and then they turned off 1, but 2 wasn't quite ready, and there was a lot of brands that it was not and Adobe bought them, and we'll see how the new version does, but it was pretty rough times. They didn't do that transition very well.
You mentioned something earlier about APIs. APIs are to SaaS platforms like USB plugs are to notebook computers.
Yes.
Pretty much these days, it's a table stake. But in any event, I mentioned earlier I'm the data and insights person. So from my perspective, success is ultimately dependent upon a client's ability to measure the performance of your solution. So can you give us a little background on what type of analytics are included in your platform? I have to imagine if you're managing your own warehouse, on behalf of your clients, you want to be able to measure the performance attributes of the throughput that you're delivering for them.
Yeah, so just the story of how in my e-commerce company, an insight when we started to deploy this that was pretty eye-opening was that our top picker was doubling the performance of our worst picker, but
Wow.
The top picker only got paid $2 an hour more than the worst picker, right? So so just the visibility into performance as well as error rate, it's just massive. Like when people see that for the first time, they always go like, oh yeah, I thought that guy wasn't that good, or I thought that girl wasn't that good, or I thought that guy was great, but they never really like promoted the good one or gave him more money or let go the bad one, because without that, the real data to back it, it's really tough to make those personnel decisions, right? And it's super basic stuff, but if you don't have it super easy to see, right? Like I have the data, but sort of to get it, I have to ask someone to run a report to get it to me.
Yep.
Versus like on ours, it's just right there. You can see the daily performance, you can see the weekly performance, you can see the monthly performance. It's so obvious. So that's sort of on the human side and the personnel management side. And then we also just have what we call the hero board, where you could see in real time. So, within that, up to that minute, how many orders are outstanding, how many were shipped, how many are in totes waiting to ship. And it just gives you really you don't have to go and peek into the warehouse or call someone at the warehouse. You see right there, anyone in the company can see, are we going to hit our SLA? We're going to get all our orders out today or not. It's super, super transparent.
Yeah, and on the fulfillment side of your business, brands have big issues on fulfillment costs in direct to consumers, since they oftentimes don't have the legacy experience in doing that. Why is your fulfillment option attractive to them?
Yeah, so the simplest thing is pricing. So transparent pricing. So if you work with UPS or FedEx, I like, it's like your bill looks like a CVS receipt, right? It's like you paid.
Oh, Aaron, you hit my sweet spot.
Okay.
That was my bit. When I was at CVS, I was the guy responsible for the 6-foot long register receipts.
Oh, were you? I
Oh
apologize.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
it's great.
it'll be on. I'm pretty sure it's going to be on my tombstone. I talk about that occasionally on the podcast, but you had me at register receipts. So go ahead.
Well, you don't want that though on your bills when you try to parse what you actually paid. So, like a typical bill is gonna have a price, a residential surcharge, maybe a delivery area surcharge, and then a fuel surcharge, right? That's on everyone. And then right now there's a bunch of surcharges they put in for holiday peak surcharges, which have been extended indefinitely. So they went from peak surcharges to just they're whatever. They're just
fee.
there.
It's
just a fee. Exactly. So so sort of having been doing this for 20 years, I still can't really understand what you're going to pay on a given package without spending several minutes per package, right? It's brutal and intentionally so, right? Because it's really hard to negotiate when there's like 90 something different ways that they price things. What's the dim divisor? Like, is that a good dim divisor or not? Like, it's impossible for anyone who doesn't specialize in understanding UPS and FedEx for a living to know what their bill's going to be, right? So the way people typically shop for a 3PL is they say, what is the 3PL going to charge me, right? They're going to charge me $2 an order, let's say, right? Okay. And then what carrier we're going to use? Okay, we're going to use UPS or FedEx. And they don't dig into what the UPS or FedEx is going to cost them because it's just too complicated. So they just ignore it, right? And then they get hit with the fees later and sort of like, it is what it is, right? And they sort of accept that that's the way the world is. If you go to our website, just go to fulfillment.shiphero.com, hit pricing, scroll down. We'll tell you exactly what the price is going to be depending on your size and weight. There's no surcharges. The other thing we didn't mention is zones, right? So typically you've got all these zones, zones 1 through 8 or 1 through 9. What people don't tell you is people sort of look at like zone 1 is cheap, zone 8 is expensive. And they're like, oh, it's probably going to be somewhere in the average. What people don't tell you is about 10 times as many packages are going to zone 8 as going to zone 1. Because they're concentric circles. So if you do your basic geometry right, it's like if you take a 300 mile circle, right? And then you do another 300 beyond that and 300 beyond that. Suddenly the last one is huge and dwarfs all the smaller ones, right? So people don't understand that. And it's super hard. They don't give you the transparency, right? So we don't do any of that. So there's no zones. It's just, this is your price. You don't have to be a PhD and start doing pivot tables to understand it. So, I mean, that's really where I think it starts, is you could use us and understand it. Also, we're not doing, same as on the SaaS, there's no contracts. We're not locking anyone into volumes or anything super complex. You could just sort of send in your product, try it, send us, 1 box, we'll ship it for you, see if you like it, and go from there. I probably went off on a tangent, Sri.
No, that's great.
No, I was about to point something really relevant out, and which is, I know we're almost out of time here, but there's so much more I want to talk to you about shipping, and we're going to have to rush through the other questions. But what I really wanted to point out here is, last few months I've been advising a bunch of D2C startups. And while doing that, Aaron, I've realized how one of the most important pieces of the fulfillment is this cross-zone transactional cost. Zone 1 to zone 5, zone 1 to zone 3, 3 to 4, whatever the case might be. And it was very refreshing to hear a fulfillment provider very transparently even bring that up to the surface, because it's a deep hidden cost that if you don't optimize, is going to hit you in the bank pretty badly as a line item in your P&L. So thanks for like expressly and transparently pointing that out. I really personally enjoyed that. Let me rush through a few more questions that I had. One is, since you are a logistics fulfillment provider as well, do you do your own co-packing for brands? Like, is that a service you offer? Do you do multi-packs? How about the world of inserts, ad collateral? Is there a charge for each one of those zones? How about boxing, packing? Do you guys bring ideas to the table for boxing? I'm just trying to get into the world of your fulfillment arm and what are the services you provide?
Yeah, so I mean, we're not a manufacturer, right? So we're not a co-packer, but we're doing all those other things. So a customer of ours called Bite, they're like Invisalign. They do like mouth
Yep.
like teeth
Yep.
stuff. So they actually sold earlier this month for just north of $1 billion, which was a great outcome from them. Um, so yeah, we go and we box the stuff and we sort of assemble the things correctly to send it out. So yeah, we definitely do all that. We charge, the price includes 3 picks. So if the insert counts as a pick, so if you're doing less than 3, it's included. If you're doing more, it's an additional 25 cents. People have more complex needs and those we price. So like not everyone fits in the standard pricing, right? There's people who want much more than that. We work with a company called Adams. They do shoes, different like quarter size. You get different men's left and right foot sizes, and they're doing a bunch of masks and stuff like that. So we'll do a bunch of custom things around it. Like the pricing is like if you want something vanilla, if you want something more, of course we'll talk about it. Same thing on the boxes side. So like we're not a box manufacturer. We work with a bunch of external providers for packaging solutions, and sometimes the customer just asks us to take care of it, and sometimes the customer takes care of it and sends us the box. Either way, totally fine.
Great. Aaron, let's talk a little bit about the future. Obviously, during this pandemic, we've seen the rise of retailers like Walmart, Target. I think I just saw a list that said Kroger is broken into the top 10 for e-commerce retailers in the country. Click and collect is huge. Really, what is the role that Shiphero is going to perform in this transforming economy where these big retailers are taking a dominant position? And have you ever considered, or are you acting as an agent for any retailers in terms of delivery?
No, so we're not an agent for any retailers. The software is being used a lot for buy online, pick up in store, and ship from store.
Okay.
So that's become really popular. I think we mentioned the Walking Company and Canadian Tire, who are
Yep.
two huge users of that. A bunch of others. So that's like basically everyone who has both, bricks and clicks has
Yep.
adopted that these days. And like I said, it's super easy. It's like a $150 a month per location to do it in our system. A lot of people adopted it, didn't even tell us, right? They just added it and just went ahead and did it. So yeah, that's been huge. I look at the biggest advantage going forward is going to be on the reducing shipping costs and reducing environmental impact. So something we haven't spoken too much about, there's a huge coming up problem in CPG and in logistics, and everyone's going to be worrying about it, is environmental impact. I thought that was going to be the story of 2020, but of course, COVID, people can only worry about a certain number of things at a time, right? But once we get through the pandemic, I think we're going to shift back to focus on global warming and sustainability, and e-commerce and the way CPG is being done direct to consumer is really not great. So we're seeing people shipping, beverages. D2C beverage companies are huge right now, and legacy beverage companies shipping direct to consumer are huge. But if you're shipping that on a plane cross country, horrible for the environment, right? That stuff is heavy, and you're emitting a lot of carbon to get it to your end consumer, versus if they can pick it up themselves from their supermarket, or they can ship from a place that's within a few hundred miles from them, you're going to reduce that impact dramatically. So we're trying to help with that. That's why we have the 7 warehouses, and we're trying to get close to the consumer, so that last mile is as short as possible, so that we're protecting the environment to the way possible. And I'm hoping more brands sort of focus on that sustainability going forward.
I for one wish we had a whole nother hour to get into the depths of shipping and the optimization opportunities across the board on fulfillment. And my last question for you, Aaron, is really anchored around that. The larger the brand, traditionally they've been hesitant to get into D2C because becoming a D2C provider, you become a retailer, which obviously adds significant investments and costs to the P&L. And what is your advice for brands seeking or thinking about the D2C journey? Can this be cost effective? And is this just a way of the future that brands need to get into to experiment?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, like, we mentioned Frito-Lay, like they had so much success with it. Like it's to the point where it's, people used to look at it as like, oh, we got to get in on the future early versus like it's here now. It'll show up. Even for a massive company, it will show up on the balance sheet if you're doing D2C right. So
Aaron, you may want to ask Peter if he knows someone who helped start the e-commerce journey for Frito.
What is this company called? Frito? I've never heard of it.
Was that your alma mater or?
Shri was the first VP of e-commerce for Frito-Lay.
Okay. So, and it's been a huge success for them, right? Like a huge win. And I wasn't just, trying to kiss up by mentioning that. They legit are doing great. I didn't know that. Yeah. So it's just a lesson for the rest of the world. Like if you're not following that playbook, you are missing out. That's one. Two, there's a couple of ways to do it. So you could do it within your current co-packers, have them do it. You could do it within your own facilities. And lastly, you can outsource it. So a company we haven't mentioned, Nestle, we're working with one of their brands where they just they didn't have the capabilities. So they're just taking a trailer worth of stuff, sending it to one of our warehouses, let us deal with it, right? That's fine too. There's lots of different ways to skin the cat. But if you're not playing in the game, you're leaving a lot of money on the table.
Great. Hey, we want to remind our audience again that links to all of our content, podcast, audio, video, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, you can get it on cpgguys.com. We also encourage you to go to LinkedIn, search for the CPG Guys and follow us there. We have about 3,300 people in our community. It's very active. We love hearing from you there. But please also go to ratethispodcast.com/CPG Guys. All these links will be in the actual liner notes of this episode, so you can get them there. You have to write them all down. But please go there and give us a rating and review because it really helps helps build our audience and ultimately attract great guests like Aaron today. Aaron, thanks again for joining us. This has been a tremendous conversation for Shri and me. Can you remind everybody, if they want to learn more about your business, where should they go?
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Just shiphero.com. You can link to, you'll see our fulfillment and our SaaS product linked from there. And if you want to contact me, I'm just Aaron, AARON at shiphero.com. Shoot me an email.
That is a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Very good. Shri, hey, another great episode. Thanks for being my co-pilot on this journey.
Pleasure doing this with you.
This is really tremendous, and I think this is very valuable for our audience as they want to understand the supply chain side of actually activating e-commerce.
Thank you.
All right, to our audience, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate all the feedback you're sending us. Helps us make the content more relevant to your needs. We look forward to you joining us in the next episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Goodbye.